an amoral economic system has turned short-term profits for huge multinational corporations into a false god.
In the face of cruelty and fear from a lawless president, we will choose to be the nation that stands up for the human rights of everyone.
Ask yourself how somebody like Donald Trump ever gets within cheating distance of the Oval Office in the first place.
The Party of Tolerance did a lot of moral grandstanding tonight. Democrats love to say they're fighting for the soul of the country now, so why the disdain for religious Americans? Back with more reaction is our panel. Rudy Giuliani, Mike Huckabee, Mark Penn, Sarah Carter. Also joining them is Ralph Reed, chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Ralph, what do you make of the Democrats trying to claim the moral high ground all of a sudden?
Well, I think you've got a lot of attempt to invoke moral and spiritual language. Obviously, you had, the New Age talk of Marianne Williamson and some of the left-wing social gospel that Mayor Pete was trying to mouth. But what's really disturbing about the modern Democratic Party, Laura, and what I can't believe these Democratic presidential candidates don't see this storm cloud on the horizon, is this past week the Senate confirmed Brian Boucher to be a district court judge, and every single Democratic senator voted against him. And Kamala Harris and other members of the Senate Judiciary Committee on the Democratic side essentially said in so many words that he was disqualified because he was a faithful Roman Catholic who was a member of the Knights of the Columbus. And not a single Democratic presidential candidate has condemned that anti-Catholic bigotry. 6 decades ago, John F. Kennedy said, and I quote, "I do not believe that I lost my chance to be president of the United States on the day I was baptized. But today, in the modern Democratic Party, you're disqualified from being a federal judge if you're a faithful Christian."
I know they have a big problem with, I think, voters of faith, deeply convicted voters. And Sarah, we were talking during the break about this, that the Democrats are trying to kind of steal that moral high ground from Trump, saying, look, he's got a bunch of marriages. Billy Bush, they're going to go back to that and saying, but we're going to save the climate.
But we're going to save the country. I think that's an insult to Americans, first of all, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg's statements about Trump and about how he got into office. And Pence is an insult to all Americans who voted for him, for those who voted for him and put him into office. So they're not going to win this way. I want to say something else. They come out with the race card. They say he's a racist. They twist his words. But facts are facts. And I think that what makes Donald Trump so important as far as the American people responding to him is the fact that he's not afraid to call out anyone when he sees failure. And Baltimore, there are serious issues. There is a serious crisis. Baltimore, San Francisco, Los Angeles, in New York City, in some areas, we're seeing it now. There is a serious crisis, and the president is willing to call him out on it. And that makes him, in my opinion, not a racist.
And Mark Penn, it is true that urban America, in many ways, my old hometown city of Hartford, Connecticut, suffering. St. Louis. These are Democrat strongholds. Trump kicked off this conversation. Is there some traction to be gained there in unlikely places for this president? Or is he just trying to say to the rest of America, unless you want to end up looking like, some of the streets of San Francisco where we got rats and human feces and homelessness rampant, vote for me. Mark Penn.
Well, look, I think there's a lot of room for a candidate, whether it's on the Republican or Democratic side, that really wants to bring back some modern notion of urban renewal, of building more charter schools rather than fewer, of dealing with the gang violence and drugs that are holding people back. Look, but by the same token, America wants a uniter, not a divider. So they want to see somebody attacking these issues in a way that brings the country together. And they want both of those things at the same time. No one is actually, I think, hitting that formula in either direction. Trump has raised some legitimate issues here about what's going on in the cities, but he's done it in a way that's turning off the very voters, those voters in the suburbs, who actually want the cities to become safe places again, and places where minorities who are in those cities can get a good education, right, and break into this economic system in the best way possible. And Trump is not reaching those voters with this message. He's turning them off.
Mike Huckabee, the idea of this election being about are you better off than you were 4 years ago, that's usually the barometer. And the right track, wrong track numbers are trending really well for Trump. But he's down among suburban women. Without a doubt, you know, the race stuff is, you don't like 51% of the country, if that poll is wrong or right, you know, thinking the president is racist. I mean, I know he's not. And I think Sarah hit it out of the park. He's willing to criticize anyone who doesn't deliver results. But how do you get those women, female voters to turn out, and young people who have this drumbeat in their head, morning, noon, and night, that he's the worst thing ever and you're a bad person if you vote for him?
I think we've got to be honest and say that Donald Trump's bedside manner is not going to change. He's 72 years old. He's president. He's a billionaire. He's achieved things that most people never will. So the likelihood that he's suddenly going to find some new demeanor is simply not going to happen. What we've got to do, those of us who support him, is to remind people that you've got a choice between doctors. You choose a guy whose bedside manner is a little gruff, but he successfully does the surgery that saves your grandma. Or you can pick a guy who's nice as can be, sits on the side of your bed, gives you a hug, holds your hand, and says a prayer with you. But when he goes into and when you go into the surgery room, you die. So which one do you want? I want someone who leads the country and does it effectively. And if I look at the employment numbers, and if I look at some moral issues, look, Ralph Reed and I would agree on this. We don't have any illusion as evangelicals that Donald Trump is one of us. But on issues that matter to us, the sanctity of life, no president, not even Ronald Reagan, has ever been as pro-life as this president. No president has ever been as defensive of Israel as this president has been. You know, so the things that matter to us, he's done them.
All right, we talk about radical policies, but some, including Buttigieg, want to go further than this. Watch.
When I propose the actual structural democratic reforms that might make a difference, end the Electoral College, amend the Constitution if necessary to clear up Citizens United, have D.C. actually be a state, and depoliticize the Supreme Court with structural reform, people look at me funny.
Rudy, meaning upend the Constitution, basically.
Well, I think that first of all, it's not going to happen, so he can say that all he wants. I also want to go back to something Mike said, because I think it's probably really the best analysis of Donald Trump you can have. He is who he is. It's worked out really well for this country. I think he can do and will do even a better job of explaining himself. But he's not going to change, and that's why we respect him. And he cares about solving problems. And he doesn't care if they're white problems, black. He doesn't think that way. And in many ways, they're racist, because they think in terms of color constantly. Color, I mean, somebody told a joke once, Mike, that said the only color Donald ever cared about was green. He's a businessman.
That's exactly right.
He's a businessman.
Yeah.
So he looks at inner city Baltimore the way I looked at inner city New York, and he's horrified by it. And I feel that I love the people in Harlem a lot more than Charlie Rangel. I changed their lives. He just became a millionaire off them and did not a damn thing for them. Harlem didn't change until they got a Republican mayor who cared about them. I probably had the same gruff manner that Trump has. But Harlem is a lot better off now than it was when Charlie Rangel was running it and all of his cronies. And the same thing is true of every American city that you just talked about, Laura.
Yeah,
and I think we have to get that message across honestly with the real Donald Trump, not some make-believe silly person.
And I think he's not going to be cowed by saying, no, I'm not going to go into the cities to campaign.
Thank God.
They're going to try to cordon those cities off and not allow him to campaign. He should say, I'm everybody's president. He should go back to San Jose, go to Chicago. Do not write off any American city if you're the president. You remember when Mitt Romney wrote off part of America? He went down in flames. Trump is not that kind of guy. Panel, the best conversation on television tonight. Thank you so much.